We're all here. It's 3 o'clock and the entire zoning board of appeals is present and no applicants. So we'll wait another couple of minutes. Hi, you joining us?
I'm here on 57 Gerald's Lane.
Okay,
I apologize.
so we do have an applicant.
I'm here.
Okay, then I will call the meeting to order and we'll take it, let's see. We'll reverse the order of the unless someone shows up in a minute. Okay, it is 3 o'clock, September 8th. I'm calling the September meeting of the Sacaponic Zoning Board of Appeals to order, and our first order of business is join me in salute the Pledge of Allegiance. John, you're here in time to pledge your allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Actually, I prefer to pledge my allegiance to the principles of the United States of America rather than a flag. But, you know, things being the way they are, we pick our battles. Okay. Has the members of the board had an opportunity to review the August 11th meeting minutes? Yes. Yes, and do I hear a motion to accept them?
I'll make a motion.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And the minutes have been approved. There were some minor typos and technical corrections, but nothing of substance. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no old business. We had rendered a decision last month on the last open items. So we have 2 items of new business. The first one is Samudra Farms LLC at 7 Fairfield Pond Lane, application 6, 2023. And for the applicant, we have John Bennett. This is an application seeking an area variance for building height, crest of dune setbacks.
Good evening, Chairman myself. I have, my name is John Bennett. I live at 212 Dinman Lane, representing the applicant. My partner Carol Reed is here with me. Christopher Ford, who's the architect, I believe that it is or should be on Zoom. I don't know that he'll need to present, but he's here to answer any questions. I believe he must have continued on the problem. And I have, before I proceed,
Just going to answer, we're having a technical problem.
okay.
By the way, we have the affidavit posting and.
I was gonna
Yeah, okay.
hand in the originals.
I saw the posting, it was down there. I saw the posting myself, it was down
That's
there.
good. I'm very proud of
Okay,
that.
turn it around.
Myself.
Oh, it opens, the other
know,
gate
there's a-
to come out opens up by itself.
Oh, it does, okay.
Yes, I thought the same thing, I was gonna have to back around.
I backed up.
My last car got a nice crease in the door because the gate started closing when it was swinging doors in a tiny area. In the back. I couldn't get out of the way. And you would think that gate would stop when you hit it.
Get close to it.
So I just handed in the originals.
Okay, so you have your affidavits.
A mailing and posting for
posting.
7 Fairfield Pond.
Okay,
This is an application that has it's in broad strokes. The property is located on Fairfield Pond Lane and maintains frontage on the Atlantic Ocean. The property is currently improved by a residence, detached garage, tennis court, pool, and some accessory associated improvements. There's an updated CO. There's 1394, which is in the package that was issued to the property on June 5, 2023. Let me give you the broad strokes and then I'll be specifics. We want to take the existing house, which is FEMA non-compliant, and built at a time when the FEMA maps were different, and raise it so that it conforms with FEMA. So quite candidly, we're not stuck in that 50% limitation on what can be done to the house, number 1. And number 2, just generally to try to conform to the Federal Emergency Management Agency elevation requirements, something which for people who are community rating, I think would be I say this with a little bit of hesitation, and I'll tell you why. If we were in the town of Southampton, which we're not, of course, from the zoning point of view, if we're in the town of Southampton, this is something we can do as a matter of right. Because the town of Southampton has decided, for the benefit of the community rating, for the benefit of flood prevention damage, if you take an existing house and raise it, elevate it, I should say, to a conforming FEMA location, you can do that as a matter of right, and you can pierce the height limitations. But I tell you this just from an anecdotal point of view. I used to make those comments, I still, with the village of Southampton zoning board of appeals, and I'm stating myself, the chairwoman, at least one, used to look at me and say, that's because we're not in the town, we're in the village. And so I understand the village wants to take a look at it on a case by case basis. I understand that. But I think we have a good, hopefully you'll agree we have a good case here. The existing residence is located in an AE17 zone, but also located in the Linwood zone. So that's an AE17 zone. So when you're in the Linwood zone, essentially, an AE zone becomes a VE zone. What does that mean? In an AE zone, your first floor elevation has to be at the required BFE, base flood elevation, in this case 17, plus 2, the first floor. But when you're in a limo zone, your lowest horizontal structural member has to be at the required base flood elevation, in this case 17, plus the 2 feet of freeboard. So instead of the requirement is 19 here. So instead of it being at the first floor where you stand, it has to be at the lowest horizontal structural member, thus requiring a higher elevation, essentially by the floor package. So we're proposing to raise the existing home a total of 4.7 feet to 44 feet 7 inches. And that's at the highest point, that's for the railing. The top of the flat roof would be a little bit lower than that. At present, the finished first floor of home is 17.2, so limo line or not, it doesn't conform. It's non-conforming as it relates to elevation under the Federal Emergency Management Agency requirements for this section. So to lift this residence, relief from the approved site on code 245-42 AC1 is requested. It used to be 42, now it's 40. So that's the height limitation in this site. So again, the existing finished floor of the home is located at 17.2. We want to elevate all structure above 19 with a finished floor of 20.17. And that's pretty good in terms of this not being an aggressive application, because remember, we want to end up with a finished floor at 20.17. That's only one foot 0.17 above the required base flood elevation, which is for the lowest horizontal structural member. What does that mean? The architect really sharpened his pencil, the engineer really sharpened their pencil, and we only have a 1 foot 0.17 floor package, which really means you have to think about how you engineer that. You gotta get all the ducts and everything through that, and that's just about 1 foot. Most of the floor package on a typical home is usually somewhere between 18 inches and 2 feet. But we knew we were going to have to come in and ask for variance, and we did what we're supposed to do, which is to try to make the variance less than the least amount that we can. Again, we have to be at base flood elevation plus 2, that's 19 for the lowest horizontal structural member. So 20.17 feet or 1.117 feet above base flood elevation plus 2, it's a very minimal floor package, not being aggressive. This will result in the top of the new roof height being raised to elevation 43.7. That's a variance of 3.7. And there's an existing railing there. And the railing is another 0.88 feet higher. So that gives us a total height request of 44.58. Now, you might say, oh, the railing is only 0.8 feet higher. It's because the roof is actually sunken. So you get that height of the railing that conforms with the state code, even though you're not a foot and a half above. So the top of the railing, which is an existing railing, would be 44.58. Top of the roof, which is sunken a bit, would be 43.7. So that's why there's a little bit of difference between the height of the railing and the height of the roof. And then, since we're raising the house, we've got what I would consider some fairly minimal requests for relief from the dune crest setback for construction of a staircase and a proposed planter, which is essentially the part of the staircase, creates some of the railing and grass and steps from 108 feet from the crest of the dune. And the proposed exterior staircase on the south side of the existing deck, 120.8 feet from the crest of dune, and the related planter, 122.4. All of this is where 125 is required. Now, there's a pool out in front of this. The house was built in 2006. Why is that pool not at 125? I guess it's 2006. This was the town code, and the town code has something in it the village doesn't have, which is when you have a wetlands issue, you reduce those setbacks. But the village code doesn't have that. So when we raise the house, the transition has to change. We have to have some steps going up to it. So we ask for some relief, which is shown on the survey, for those steps and associated planters. Again, all those setbacks are behind or land of the existing pool and pool patio. And that's the only relief, setback relief that we're asking for. I don't think you'll be the ultimate judge of this, and I trust you exercise your discretion wisely and fairly, as you always do. It's submitted that the granting of the requested relief will not cause the undesired change in the character of the neighborhood. We are asking for this help to comply with FEMA flood elevation requirements, which is a good thing. That's why we have good community rating out here, and we're trying to come into conformance. And the dune crest relief, again, as I said, was minimal. We really can't get there by any other means other than elevating the house. I just want to talk very, very quickly about a couple of prior decisions. We had the Sweet Potato Lane. The board granted a 5-foot variance to 45 foot to comply with FEMA flood elevation requirements. And in addition to that, they also approved expansion of the existing residence through construction of a 2-story addition. Here we're asking for relief from the height restrictions to elevate to 44.7, inclusive of the lattice railing. Height is poses 4.3. We're not increasing at all the gross floor area. In fact, we're reducing the gross floor area of the principal residence from 10,087 square feet to 9,929. Not a lot, but nevertheless, it's a reduction. The only expansion of the residence is on the west side. You can see it as a little nub coming off the otherwise rectangular house footprint on the survey. The only increase in the footprint is to an area to construct for utilities being raised to comply with FEMA. Again, a good thing, a very good thing from a health, safety, welfare, and land use point of view. That complies with all setback requirements and complies with height restrictions that will nub on the westerly side of the house. And of course, since it's for utilities only, we get the benefit of a bit of a safe harbor from the gross floor area. When you folks granted Sweet Potato, I think in language that is entirely applicable to this case, the difficulty here is not self-created. The proposed project requires compliance with Chapter 88. That's your local FEMA regulation, and the nature of the existing house and the property triggered the need for most of the variance relief. Placement of the property in the limbo zone, that's when the one Sweet Potato was relatively recent, 2009. Similar facts to here. Our existing residence was constructed in 2006 prior to change in the flood zone designation. Thus, there's no self-created hardship here. It was a later, wise amendment and a wise change to increase the base flood elevation, but it certainly wasn't any sort of thing that could be argued to be a self-created hardship. And that's the only way we can get there. The only thing I would add is that unlike a couple things actually, unlike the Sweet Potato Lane lot, this is a wide lot, which thank goodness we don't require any lot line setbacks, either front or side yard setbacks. The only setback relief we require for those dune crest structures, which are landward of the leading edge of the structures, and then that's for to get up to the house since we're elevating. It's not a substantial variance. The proposed roof of the residence will be elevated only 3.7 feet above the code requirement, and again that railing is it's only less than a foot by reason of the fact that the roof is sunken. It's a type 2 action as a matter of law, no significant environmental impact. The only other case that I wanted to mention, and I have the Potato Lane case in here somewhere, just so I have it for the board, doesn't have to look for the Sweet Potato Lane. I have a bunch of copies of it. Sorry. Distribution to the board. And the other case that we granted some relief, and that was for new construction. I was actually co-counsel for a while on the property. The Triller case, I'm not going to hand that out. 99% of the case deals not with the height variance, but nevertheless you would get 2 feet of relief. And I just assume mention that and then move on. So I think there are obvious reasons, but I think this is a fairly clear, reasonable case. Trying to conform to FEMA. It's not aggressive, taking the existing house. Only add a little bit of footprint, and that doesn't even go into the GFA. Okay, interesting. And those relief for setbacks is only because I have a different transition now to get into the house. And again, those structures are well behind the leading edge of the pool and some other things that are much closer to the dune. That's it.
Mm-hmm. So I'm confused. How are you reconfiguring the house if you're driving down? Is it being totally refurbished? Is it being torn down and rebuilt?
No, it's not being torn down. I think I would have a hard case if it was being torn down.
But how are they getting down to the less square footage from 10,000? 10.8
Some
to 9?
of the
What is going on
good
in the
question.
house?
Some of the areas on the ocean that are enclosed now, we're going to open them up so they won't count into GFA. It's not a lot. It's about 150 square feet. It's not a lot, but I had to throw that in there because it's less GFA, so that's a good thing, even though it all conforms. That's just merely opening up structure, areas that are now enclosed and otherwise would be included in GFA. You know, you get under these houses, and I don't know, maybe the architect can talk about it. What you do is you get under these homes. If you have enough room, you move it off the area. But my guess, and the architect might be telling me to keep my day job, or Ken Busco might be telling me to keep my day job at any time. Sometimes you crib it up and put these spherical piles underneath it, and you just lift it up in place. Ken or Chris, can you give us some information on that? How the elevation is going to happen?
The microphone's off.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so just as John was saying, it's more of exactly as he stated, as lifting the house and putting piles underneath it to get to the FEMA compliant. The way that we would be getting to a lower square footage is pulling off of the facade. And in this package that you have open right now, I believe shows the exact way that we would.
Ken, I simply want to ask you how you're getting the house elevated. Are you moving it off the site and putting in wooden piles, or are you lifting it up and putting in cribbing it up and putting spherical piles underneath it? Just please, I'm trying to get through the cases efficiently as I can.
It would be a combination of both. it would be efficient to pull the second floor off and lay it on the rear yard than to get the structure up and install the piles.
Ken, you still haven't answered the question, please.
It's,
Are you moving the house? And that's all I want you to answer.
no,
Moving, well, let me ask you the question so we can give the board the information that they're asking for. Are you going to move the house off the site or are you going to crib it up and drive in spherical piles? If you don't know the answer, you don't know the answer.
we're cribbing it up.
Yeah, but he said that he would take the second story off and locate it in the backyard. Now, that's core 10 steel. I mean, this seems like a pretty complicated construction task.
Mhm.
But essentially, you're not taking the house off the site, but you're
No.
gonna take it off its
No.
current footprint. The house gonna be moved from its current footprint, or the second story will be set aside, the first story will be lifted in place?
That's a
Is
yes
there
or
a
no
basement,
answer.
is there a basement or a crawl space, or is it on a
No, I
slab?
can't because I'm in a flood zone. I'm in a high velocity.
slab.
Yeah, I
Slab.
gotta be on probably drive piles put on grade beams and concrete piers.
So the beams are gonna be lifted,
Yes.
and taller structure underneath, whether these cylindrical.
Yes.
Piles, right, well, that seems logical.
Yeah, and that's the way we do it. Thank you, Ken.
I had the same question about how it got smaller, but I understand it's those outlying areas that get removed. The areas that are going to further encroach into the coastal erosion zone, limit line, whatever, those are merely access structures, like the stairways to get to the pool, which is now going to be much lower relative to the.
That's it. I'm just gonna share with you, I was the bad guy many times on this project. It was this typical refrain that I hear all the time, which is, as long as we're going to the zoning board of appeals, can we ask them? No.
But it's
So
not
that's what I do.
enclosed
We
space.
I do a lot of your work for
Yeah,
you.
But there's no enclosed space
No,
that's further approaching,
absolutely
it's
not.
only access, basically,
Absolutely.
because of the increased elevation.
Such as an
Absolutely.
additional step or whatever, right? So you're
Steps.
raising it as additional steps.
That's the transition. 'cause
And
we're raising it.
you need the angle for the
Certain
steps. to
Right,
get to the
I get that.
pool. So that approaches. Okay, I had a couple things. Number one, you've characterized this, I mean, in part in the context of the self-created hardship context, but really, it's the self-created hardship is not the FEMA. They don't have to raise this house. FEMA does not require this house to be raised. If they elect to raise it, and the cost of doing so exceeds 50% of the value of the current structures, then it has to be raised to the FEMA levels.
Well, let me respond. to that.
Otherwise, it does not.
Well, let me respond. Number one, I would think that you would encourage people, for whatever reason, want to raise something to conform to FEMA, because that helps the community rating. But let me get there. Let me get there. But then, if you look at the FEMA bulletins, what gets thrown into that 50% is, I mean, if you look at the FEMA bulletins and you want to put new kitchen cabinets in your house, that's part of the 50%. It's very, the federal government has said they're going to throw the entire kit and caboodle in any dollar that you put into this house, so it gets very
You're
difficult.
addressing the technical details and not the principle. The principle is the house does not need to be raised at all. And if it's raised and the cost is less than 50%, whether it's kitchen cabinets or whatever else gets thrown into then it doesn't have to be raised to FEMA level. The presumption also that we want to encourage people to raise the FEMA level, I take issue with. I think people should be entitled to try to protect their homes. If they can do so without violating our zoning code, then that's the way they should do it. So if they could raise the house to protect it, but not necessarily to FEMA levels, which may be excessive, and the self-created hardship is them having bought the house on the ocean front to begin with, not the adoption of FEMA regulations, then we should be looking to see whether there is a way for them to accomplish both results. Raise the house to protect it from reasonable storms, 100-year storms rather than 1,000-year storms, but not necessarily breaching the height. Now, I'm not As
Can't
con-
get there, because the house doesn't comply currently. And if I may, I think, if I may, and it's, you know, I don't blanch from having, you know, a policy and a legal argument.
John, I
with the
enjoy these
chair.
discussions with you because you're knowledgeable and they're informative, so
What
don't
you're
apologize.
really doing is turning one of the policies that goes through zoning, goes through your own code. This section is in your zoning code, it's in your town code. And the whole concept of many of these theories is that you're supposed to encourage people to bring structures into conformity. That's what we're doing. This is a non-conforming structure right now. We're trying to bring it into conformity with something. It's an environmental and it's a health regulation. And the law is quite clear that when you have a tension between a quote meager zoning setback, such as a height regulation, and something like the health, safety, flood prevention section, all those things, the zoning is supposed to fall. So what you're saying to me is that you'd rather have someone in
No, don't put
Okay.
words on my mouth, and
Fair enough,
particularly
fair enough.
that characterization, which is black and white with no nuance. It's not a question of either protecting the house or complying with the law. It's as I characterized it, it's protecting the house without violating the code. So it's up to us to try to explore whether there is a lesser variance that's possible or an alternate means of doing so, and both of which invite the exploration of the cost of the alteration, enabling the homeowner to raise the house for more conforming protection, if not necessarily conforming to FEMA, while still not breaching a very important critical component of our code. And the reason it's a critical component of the code is not just this house. This is an attractive, low, flat-roofed house, and raising it up is probably relatively inoffensive. However, we have a number of houses on the waterfront within the zone. You're aware, you mentioned the Petrillo case. We have Edie Lutnick's case. We have, by the way, Howard Lutnick, who built a beautiful new house, which is totally in compliance. It's FEMA protected at elevation, and yet it doesn't breach the height
When
restriction.
Howard built this house, because I was involved in that, he's
Yeah.
right next door to his sister.
Right.
Height limitation is 42 feet.
All right, but my point is you can comply with the code while still protecting the house. Howard basically did it. Edie wants to raise a house. No,
What?
It's elevation 40, top house. Was built on big.
Opened it up, I was involved with variance and everything, that was before you changed the code from 40 to 42. Take a look.
I don't want to get
I'm
bogged
wrong,
down.
John.
I don't want to get bogged down in that detail because the issue is not merely the detail. Our job is to afford individual homeowners relief from a law that was written for an entire community when we recognize that properties differ. Some have wetlands, coastal erosion zones, limbal lines, they're narrower, they're wider. There are reasons to give variances from the code, which I obviously respect and I value, having been one of the authors of the code, recognizing that it doesn't work for everyone. But my duty here is also to protect the integrity of the code itself and to make sure that the minimum variance is granted wherever possible so that the homeowner can accomplish the result without doing violence to the neighborhood, to the community, and to the underlying values of the code. Now, I mentioned that there are other properties along the waterfront. And so I'm wrestling with where to give relief and how much relief to give. We have granted some relief. You mentioned Potato Lane. That differs from this, by the way, because it was only a tiny portion of a slanted roof furthest away from all of the properties that was piercing that roof line, not the entire structure, just a very small portion. Furthermore,
Petrillo was a brand new house.
Furthermore, we're still talking about Potato Lane. Furthermore, it was in a section on Potato Lane where there were other homes immediately adjacent to it, which actually exceeded the height. So it wasn't changing the neighborhood. It was only a small part of the roof. It wasn't in proximity to other properties like the Pearl Binder property immediately to the east, which was the closest and of concern. So it was granted there, but it was denied in Edie Lutnick's case, where she wanted to lift an entire house, and without exploring alternate locations for a 650 square foot master suite and 250 square foot bathroom that would have been entirely in a prohibited zone. And the, what is it, 1145 Sag Main, which is, they wanted to go to 51 feet. Okay. So those are clearly excessive. This one is clearly more moderate, and it's closer in line with the kinds of variances that we grant, particularly in light of, and you've illustrated, or your architect has illustrated it, on one of the last page of Mitchell Studios' drawings, shows ceiling heights, and how you'd be limited to roughly 7.1 foot or 7 feet 1 inch. I can't tell if it's 7.1 or 7 feet 1 inch ceiling heights if you were in compliance both with the FEMA regulations and the height restrictions.
Yeah,
So I'm sympathetic.
And again, I said, do not be greedy with the 4-package, engineer it so that it's, I don't wanna have, I've had people come in and say, here's the 4-package, I said, the architect, it's a goddamn 3-foot 4-package. You don't think that people don't read the.
I hear you, I heard the arguments, I'm sympathetic. I also appreciated the intent and the ability to compress the floor package and the height and the explanation about the railing, all of which. So a lot of this conversation is because you were on record as making certain statements and assumptions with which I disagree.
Okay.
Which was that we want people to go to FEMA height, not necessarily. And also
But
that.
I'm either there or not, I don't get the benefit.
No, well, no, but this is something that I think we should be exploring, which is modifying the code perhaps, or having some latitude in the way the cost of the alteration is calculated, if that's not mandated by FEMA, so that we can allow people to raise their homes to reasonable safety without necessarily going to full FEMA height. Because I don't want this village to look like maybe the Jersey Shore with a bunch of houses up on stilts, just totally obscuring the waterfront from Daniels Lane and from, the beautiful open village.
Well, the good thing about this, it is a flat roof design, number one, and boy, that is one hell of a.
And it's a
long private
far,
road
long
before you
way.
get down there.
Point taken,
Yeah.
okay? So as I said, I'm not as unsympathetic as I may sound to your particular variance as I am to the waterfront applications, which are posing problems for us and potentially creating adverse precedents.
You have to be careful.
Okay.
I appreciate
So this may be a one-off situation. Now, talk to me a little bit about the railings. So is that a walking roof? Is there a terrace, or
I think.
is it a
ceiling-
usable ceiling, roof on the top deck?
Yes, there's the roof is.
Not
it's
shown.
a small parapet, which is
You can see
why
from
the railings.
I was aware of the parapet, and you mentioned that the parapet was high enough with the recessed roof to give you the 42-inch legal railing to allow it to be used.
Yeah, so it doesn't.
My question, because you held your architect answering the question that was asked and not what he wanted to say, my question was, is it currently a traffic roof, or is it not?
I believe it is, yes.
Anybody have an?
Is Chris on the?
Gentlemen, can you hear me?
Who's speaking?
Hi, this is Chris Ford for the architect.
Thank you.
Hi, if I heard the question correctly, John, you were asking, is the roof currently trafficked?
Yes.
There is a roof deck on the house today. Yes.
Is it the whole roof?
No, it's a portion of the roof, and the new terrace occupies roughly the same footprint.
What percentage would you say? I think that's the follow-up.
If I had to put a number to it, it's probably 35%.
So for example, and I'm not necessarily suggesting this, I'm just thinking of various alternatives. For instance, if we wanted to permit some relief from the current 40-foot cap in order to allow the FEMA raising, but this is a very long house. Would it be possible perhaps to remove the railing or not go to the full, the height on a portion that's not being used as an active roof deck.
We can
So that you
consider-
don't have as high a profile for as long a length.
I understand that. I can tell you right now, we can limit it to, what, did you say 35%, Chris?
That's right. If you look at, I'm sorry, I'm going to the sheet now, the roof plan in the package you have, A104.
A104?
You can see the dashed green outline represents
Yeah.
the existing.
Okay, so it is
roof
shown.
Okay, so
So
do we
it-
have
it
to
is
have
smaller.
a roof railing on any other part of the house? We can do away with that, correct?
But where the solar panels are, for example, you don't need that railing.
That's correct.
Okay.
So that would reduce the height profile for a substantial portion of that profile.
I have no problem with that as a condition.
I would be interested in that.
I mean, I would offer that as a condition right now.
Okay, so I stated my principles about minimizing these obstructions of the view sheds throughout the village, which is one of its outstanding characteristics and unique to the Hamptons, where everything else is hedged in. It might as well be in the Berkshire Mountains. We've got an open village with flat fields, views of the dunes. I don't want structures popping up and obstructing it. So that is keeping the floor package narrow, minimizing the elevation you're seeking, taking away the railing on 2/3 of that roof elevation. Seems to me to be offering reasonable accommodations so that the relief being sought is probably the minimum required to accomplish the homeowner's objective. All right, I've sort of said my piece. Anybody, Jay, you're listening in online, you on Zoom, Zoom. You have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I guess in the package, I guess I would just want to clarify, what is the top of the railing height today? Is it the 44.7 less the 4.7 reliefs? You're right at 40 now? What is the top of the railing today in the existing structure?
Well, we're moving it, we want, I think we want 44.7 of the relief. I guess the top of the railing today, I don't, Chris, do you know, is it at 40 or is it at 41?
You know, I'm looking for a drawing that gives me that information. I don't know off the top of my head.
I do too. I
Yeah, it was
thought
too
so.
small for my eyes to read, but I think it's on that same page that I saw the elevation on the far left side of A392. Is that the answer to the question, or is that the proposed? It's
Let's see.
existing building.
Where's your existing, Chris, do you have existing heights on here?
Yes, if you look at the series of datums, the horizontal lines across each drawing, not on this page, but on the prior sections,
Which page, can you name it by number?
A391.
No, yeah.
So if you look at the horizontal datums labeled in the middle of the sheet, we have existing and proposed elevations.
Existing is on the left, and in answer to Jay's question, then that line that runs across appears existing top of roof and
You don't have it.
You don't have the
you don't have
railing, you have the
addition
roof.
there, though.
Correct. I believe the railing is probably matching that elevation.
Say again, is,
I believe the existing rail matches that elevation at 39.42.
well, I see an existing roof deck and then substantially higher than that. Maybe it says existing top of roof. That includes the railing, I presume.
No, I wouldn't assume that.
No, well, then I'm not sure what I'm seeing here then.
you have existing roof deck at 30, I guess I can't read it.
36.
Well, I don't bring a magnifying lens. Is that 36 or
Can you give
38?
us- Can you give us that info, Chris? The existing, is the existing roof at 36 3/8, and then the railing would be a foot higher than that, so 37, something like that?
The roof deck, pardon me, the roof deck label there is the surface that you walk on at
Okay.
3600.
Okay,
And so the guardrail would then be probably 36 inches above that,
So it's
elevation 39.
42 inches is code, I think, for the
36.
36?
42
Maybe the city, New York is 42 inches,
That's right.
36, New York's 42.
I think. Okay.
So the railing, we're talking about, I guess, being 4.5 feet or so higher than the existing railing with the proposed 4.5, almost 5.
Right, which is the 44.7 in the affidavit. Okay,
So the total variance is 4 feet 7 at the highest point,
At the
which
highest,
is now going to be reduced in terms of the area that is at that height.
we would only have a railing on. again,
35%.
Yeah, I wanted to, so you could talk about that with specificity. It's shown on one of the,
Yeah, where the green area is.
it's on A104, it's just in the area of green.
All right. So the maximum height exceeding the code is the 44.7,
4.7.
but only for roughly 1/3 of the length of the house.
Well, I don't know, whatever that is.
Well, whatever that is,
I-
yeah, for the habitable area, usable area. And then the remainder of it, without that railing, that's gonna be 36 inches lower,
No,
it won't be that much.
a foot lower, about point.
Yeah.
because the parapet is
Yes.
there, not just the railing. Okay,
Exactly.
all right, but it'll be a foot lower, so that will be only 43 feet.
Yes, that would be,
Well, maybe 43. So
43.
if someone comes to us and asks for 51 feet, we can say, well, we didn't give anything near that.
No,
okay, so we have the height of the roof. The railing there, the 0.88, that is necessary to meet code for, elevation, a proper railing in front of a
If it's a
occupied
walking
or trafficked
surface,
area?
yes,
yes, if it's usable by people, you need that protective railing at 36 inches above that walking level.
but there's decking there now, and obviously for obvious reasons, we want to maintain that.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
No, that's good.
Nope, okay, well, is there any reason to hold, do we have any letters from any neighbors or anything in this at all? Nothing. Okay. So if there's
It'd be nice to get letters from the neighbors, I would like that.
Excuse me?
Neighbors, one potato, that was one of the critical things, because they were so close, was we had letters from both neighbors approving.
We didn't require them.
We didn't require, I'm not asking to require it, it'd be nice to have, is what I'm saying.
No. I'll tell you what, if you can get letters from the neighbors that support the application, we will entertain them even if we close the hearing. Written submission will be permitted, but not
Okay.
required.
I just have one more question. So what, are they renovating the house? What is what is the purpose of raising this thing 4 feet? What are they trying to
So
do? It's not,
they're not rebuilding the entire house, so they want to raise it, they like the house, they want to raise it, they want to redo it, but the whole purpose of
they
raising.
want to redo the house. They're
Yeah.
gonna redo the inside and redo
Yes,
the house.
absolutely.
The inside is very minimal, as it is.
Yeah.
right now. Few partitions and few structures, it's rather minimal. It's a pretty nice modern house.
And all that stuff, when you start doing that work, it all gets thrown into the 50% limitation. You can't. You can't get within the FEMA 50% limitations, because obviously the code is made, if you're gonna substantially a house, you've got something like that, the code is made to make it reasonable.
But it would be nice to be able to bring it into greater conformity without being required to go to full FEMA height. And one means of the flexibility of doing so is by changing the threshold of the cost of the improvement, or finding that the costs, or minimizing the costs so that they don't exceed the threshold.
I actually have a great idea.
That way you can have it both ways.
I have a great idea.
What's that?
When they put the 2 foot of freeboard in, correct me if I'm wrong, but they put the 2 foot of freeboard in as a stopgap before they redid the FEMA maps.
Yeah.
About 10, 11, 12 years ago. So when they redid the FEMA maps, why did they have to leave the 2 foot of freeboard there? we've already presumably drawn new maps to give you better elevation requirements. The 2 foot of freeboard, everybody knew was a stopgap. So the federal government should let you say, you don't have to deal with the 2 foot of freeboard. That's just.
Well, that would be helpful. I mean, I don't know how feasible it is, but it's something to look at.
We've got-
Anyway, I've burdened you with solving a problem which is larger than your own application. But I appreciate it because it's important to us.
It may be a sickness, but I love talking about it.
All right, if there are no further questions or comments with respect to this application, either in favor or in opposition, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing of the application.
Wait, before we close, Elliot, do we want to keep it open so that they can submit new plans on the new railings?
The hearing is closed, but the submission of documents will be permitted up to 10 days prior to the next hearing date in October.
October 13th.
October 13th. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Clarify that.
It's okay, I appreciate it. Okay, and I'm sorry I dragged you out here on a Friday.
Oh,
but,
no, it's like-
it works for me. Okay, then we'll move on to the second application. Oh, yeah, no, I asked for the motion.
Yeah, I'll make a
Motion, I'll second it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, okay, unanimous.
Yep, aye.
Hearing is closed. We will entertain written submissions, perhaps letters from the adjacent neighbors. The Horowitz is on one side, and I'm not sure who's on the other side. Whatever it is. Okay, thanks, John.
Thank you all.
Okay, our next application is that of 57 Jared's Lane LLC at that location, application 5 of 2023. This one is also a little exotic. It's an area variance for FAR for addition, and as I understand it, it's effectively to legalize a bedroom over a garage, which was a pre-existing bedroom that then had to be removed to comply with code. There is an upgrade of the septic system, which would enable the installation of the bedroom, but it will then be an expansion of the FAR, which is why you're here. I hope I haven't stolen your presentation.
It's a great one. Just for the record, my name is Jackie Morley. I'm here to continue the on behalf of the applicant. Also, I believe on Zoom, we have Crew Brothers Construction as well, and support project plans. We categorize it correctly. Our client purchased the property. Oh, yep, we have those, sorry.
No, that's okay. I just want the record to show we received the affidavit of posting it.
And could the speaker get a little closer to the mic? We're having a little hard time hearing it online here. Apologies for that.
It may be hard to hear.
Okay.
A little bit
Sorry
loud.
about that. So as you had said, that the bedroom was existing when the house was constructed in 2016, when our client purchased the property in 2021 in order to deliver this CO.
It was existing, but it was not a legal bedroom.
It's not legal.
So it's not a pre-existing non-conforming use, because it wasn't legal at the time that it was there.
Right, correct. I hope I didn't say that.
No, you didn't. I just want to be clear.
Yeah, absolutely. So in order to receive the CO, it was then removed and our client purchased. So it now sits, and I think we have exhibit E, we have pictures of the interior and also the exterior. It sits unfinished above the garage. The applicant this time would like to apply to fill it out. As you can see, it's a 582 square foot increase from the allowable allowable FAR for this dwelling. We did hear from one neighbor at 66 Sheridan Lane, which is directly across the street. He had no issue with the application.
Is that in the record, or is this just an oral?
That was oral. I spoke to him on the phone.
Okay.
And I had asked him if he would a letter. I had asked him, this was just last week that I heard. I hope to receive this. So, from the exterior, this was not, it has no real change to the current dwelling. It really just was a build out of an existing framed out area of the garage. This property dwelling is in line with the size of the other dwellings in the area. This would create 8 bedrooms. There's a 9-bedroom house estimate house around here too. For what the applicant is proposing is the most minimal way to achieve this goal, being as it already is there and laid out. The square footage is not significant in comparison to the size of the house and the size of the house in the area. And we have provided to did include FAR overages, one is partially to the preservation of a barn there, so it wasn't significant. I believe it was around 11,000 FAR overage there, and then on another property that we referenced is a have an F and G in our package. There must have been a pre-existing overage for that property, and the approved amount was 362, so a little under our proposal, but still in the same ballpark.
Now, the application says you received approval for a larger septic system. Is one being installed? Has it been installed? What's the story in that?
It has not been installed as of yet, and I can have previously talked with Mark too. I don't think we're working on this project before we can ask to come in to do the design.
Well, if we grant the variance for the bedroom, I think that would be a condition.
Of course, absolutely. I think they were just waiting to see what's going on here, but if I can ask them, it was food service. I don't think your name might still off. Mike, are you there?
I don't see it.
Let's see.
I see. So yeah, there. He's on. He's
Unmute, oh,
unmuted now.
We are here.
Mike, can you just speak to the septic and that approval, and then what that would be if we were granted this?
Sure. There is a septic approval from the Board of Health that the engineer Drew Bennett did from East Hampton. So we have the approval. We just have not submitted for the permit through the town yet, which we're doing all together. If we get approved for the construction of the room and the bathroom. But he does.
Any approval for a variance for that bedroom would be a condition would be that the septic system be installed. The new approval. Right?
Yeah, and he does plan on. He already has the septic quoted. He already has it approved through Board of Health. He just wants to make sure he gets the variance for the room first before he installs the septic system.
All right, and there is no change in the exterior. The building envelope is what it is. The interior space is the same. It's merely the change of use of a currently uninhabitable space to a habitable space, which was previously illegally occupied as a habitable space, which unfortunately is a widespread phenomenon of people getting permitted to build spaces with uninhabitable space above them and then converting them to habitable space. I guess your client had to get a new updated C of O in order to close title, which uncovered the fact that the room was not legal, which entailed them pulling the legality of the room. And to their merit, they've investigated the upgraded sewage system so that they could reinstall the bedroom without having any visual impact on the community. Of course, visual impact is nil because when I went to inspect the property in anticipation of this meeting, I couldn't get near it because it's fully hedged in and there's a gate closed. So I couldn't quite tell where this was, but I take you at your word that there will be no change in the exterior configuration, that the room will have the necessary additional septic. And the only question really is whether this relatively small grant of additional FAR in that neighborhood would have an adverse effect on the neighborhood or environment. And I think that probably is not inconsistent with variances we've granted in the past in these situations. My concern is really the abuse, which is not your client's issue here, of people putting habitable space in illegal areas, which, John, I guess there's not much we can do about it.
We actually changed our code. That storage space over the garage would now have been included in the former area ratio calculations, because it would have a ceiling height of 7 foot or better.
So even if it weren't, then.
Yeah, it's
so-
situations like this that we uncovered that made us put that code change in place now.
Okay, all right. So, questions?
Yeah, just a side question. There is, I couldn't get any, plus the, like, this beautiful piece of property. But there is a pool and there's a pool house out there. Is that a habitable space that in the pool house now, with septic system in it?
I believe that.
It's an accessory structure.
Yeah, I think the clause is not that.
It should be, I don't think-
Yeah, we don't allow sleeping or cooking in.
Yeah.
So there's not, it's not a habitable space. It's a big structure that looks like it was recently constructed. So.
As far as I'm aware, there's only an outdoor shower attached to it, nothing in the house would be.
Okay, I mean, so right now the structure, it's bare above the garage right now, the pictures that you
Yes,
showed.
yeah, those pictures.
And John, you seen the space and everything?
Yes.
You saw pictures, I haven't seen the
Oh,
pictures.
sorry, that.
Yeah, on the exhibits.
Which exhibit?
E,
E?
yeah, and then if you see the two exterior,
No, my exhibit E is.
Okay.
You don't have
That's pretty tricky.
it.
Okay.
Yeah, see?
There's a tab for exhibit E, but there's nothing in it.
Oh, you know what?
You only left it out of the chairman.
I actually have questions.
Okay, yeah, well, thank you. Okay.
And then John, you have to approve the septic system, whatever they install. I mean, there's all types of septic systems now, obviously.
They didn't have the proper, Suffolk County Department of Health septic system. This would be an AI
I mean,
system.
some are better than others, as we've had in the
It's
past.
whatever the county requires, and they do their own inspections.
Okay, thank you. All right, yeah, that's illuminating. All right, yeah, so it's a very nice space. And it's enclosed already. And you've got the septic for it, so.
So was there water in that space before? Was there a bathroom in there before?
I know that the plan is to include a bathroom, I do know if there was a bathroom there before, are we just completely matching the exact plan that was before? I know that our plan now is to do that. I didn't even get that.
I didn't hear an answer to the question.
Yeah,
Well, if there was a bathroom, it was illegal. And it's
Right,
been
that's what I'm
removed.
curious.
Are you looking for us to answer that question?
Yes,
Jack?
what was in there before?
So, in there before, there was a bathroom and a bedroom. Our client basically wants us to put it back exactly the way it was when he had bought the house and then realized that it was illegal and had to rip it out. So he's just trying to legalize everything the correct way and put it back exactly the way it was, which there was a full bathroom in there and it was a bedroom with a closet.
All right, anybody have any further comments, questions? If not, I will entertain a motion to close the hearing on this application. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right, there's no further business before the board today. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting is adjourned. You can cease recording. Thank you very much.